Hello, everybody. This is Merle Rutledge, the 2021 candidate for governor of Virginia. I already had told people before that we are bringing somebody on that's very special in regards to interpreting and giving out information about COVID and how the numbers actually work and what's really going on and what's not being told to Virginia citizens. So I have Dean Black, who is great with numbers. He's going to introduce himself so you know what he's all about and also understand why he's telling you what's really going on here in Virginia with COVID. So, Mr. Black, can you tell everybody in the audience a little bit about your background and, of course, some information on yourself?
Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we got a good connection.
Good connection, okay. Yes, I am here in Virginia for about 16 years, but I was a guy comes from the automotive industry up in the Rust Belt. That would be Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, that kind of thing, New York. And I did my career as an engineer, mechanical engineer, designing and developing automobiles for a major automotive company. I eventually was an engineering executive for the company. And being an engineer, I'm all about, as you might imagine, the numbers. So ever since we heard about COVID and COVID-19, which I started paying attention to back about January this year, I've been all over the numbers from the various government websites to see what the numbers say about COVID deaths, COVID cases, COVID this, COVID that. So all that I want to share with you today is undisputable numbers that come directly from the main government websites, either the state COVID dashboard websites or the website, which is full of the numbers. Unfortunately, the media doesn't show you much about the real numbers. They scare you with all kind of other things. So that's me. I'm an automotive engineer and I'm a numbers guy, and I'm going to share with you some factual, undisputable numbers from the government website.
Okay.
Less scared about COVID-19 than you were when we started.
Okay. Now, for the audience, how bad are we off right now based off of COVID and how it's affecting businesses and people?
Say your question again there.
Okay. I was asking, as far as with COVID, how much destruction do you think has been done to the economy here in Virginia based off of what's been going on with COVID and everything that's happening from the lockdowns? Do you feel like Virginia is in a hole that we don't know about?
So on, the number would be humongous damage, collateral damage as a result of basically shutting the economy down and causing businesses sometimes a lifetime's worth of work to go down the drain for businesses that have been caused to be shuttered and go bankrupt. This has resulted in huge collateral damage and needless, I would say, but we'll get into that.
Okay. All right. So you have sent me some emails in regards to, of course, the data that you collected, and of course, you've been going over the numbers. How many people, from your interpretation from the data and from the CDC, have really died from COVID in Virginia or nationwide?
Well, nationwide, you hear the numbers that were about 190,000 deaths attributed from the national data to COVID, but you may or may not.
Okay.
Actually, fairly quietly announced that of those 180, 190,000 COVID deaths in America, that only about 9,200 of those deaths actually were from COVID and COVID alone, and that's 6% of them. 94% of those reported deaths are with people, more often than not, quite aged, who had one or more very serious, what's called comorbidities, or to be in plain English, other serious health issues in addition to being diagnosed positive with COVID-19. So the number of 180, 190,000 announced is way overstated, because of those, there's only about less than 10,000 that actually died of COVID and COVID alone. Does that answer your question on the national scale?
Yes, that definitely did answer the question. So I'm pulling up some of your charts right now.
All right.
You had sent me on the information that you had collected, so you can discuss what's going on here with the numbers. So I'm bringing up this chart first. I'm going to go down the list, and it discusses about the table one, deaths involving coronavirus disease in 2019, pneumonia, influenza. So it's the provisional death count for coronavirus disease. Now, this is one of the charts that you sent me. So how should people interpret the data from the first chart you sent me from table one?
Okay, this is pictures worth thousands and millions of words. This again comes directly from the CDC website for national data. The various colored lines there are deaths versus time. Time is on the horizontal axis there by week, and then the vertical axis is number of deaths, and the different colors are for different age groups. And so what we have here, as you see on the week, it might be difficult to see there, but the peak of all of those age groups of deaths occurred the week of April 18th this year. The peak occurred way back the week of April 18th nationally for all age groups. You see, no matter what color. Okay, of course the top one, the red or orangish one, is for people between over 85 years of age. Okay, and then the next one down from that is ages 75 to 84, and you go down lower, and it's for lower and lower age groups. Naturally, the younger you are, the less probability you had of dying of COVID. But there's the key idea here. People don't know that COVID deaths in America, per the CDC, peaked the week of April 18th. Now, that would be May 9th, 18th, June 18th, July 18th, August 18th, in September. That's 5 months ago. The deaths from COVID reported by CDC hit their peak. And you'll notice then that subsequently the deaths have fallen for all age groups very dramatically and continue to fall. So unfortunately, people don't know that in general. I think it would be news to most people. Most are still being, I guess, under the impression that the death rate is still high. Well, it's not. And it's unfortunate that that's not given to the American public more than it is, which is essentially none. Nobody, for the most part, knows that the death rates of COVID peaked way back 5 months ago. And it pretty much, but now we're wearing masks like crazy, like never before and so on. Well, I guess if you're going to wear a mask, it would have been best to really get into it back then. And really the need to do that is much, much, much less today than it was 5 months ago. So that's probably the best chart to show everybody you can, to help them understand that they don't need to be so fearful as they used to be about dying of COVID-19. And also for them to know that, if you're quite young, down in, let's say, the 0 to 24 year age bracket, you don't have a chance in heck of dying of COVID-19. That'd be the low purple and blue on that chart there. You can forget about dying of COVID-19 if you're young and healthy. Okay. Next chart, if you would.
Okay. Now, Is there any other information from the first chart that we're seeing right now? Everybody's saying it right now, that's looking at the live feed, that we should also note is going on with the data. Because we seeing the scale when peaked and what has happened since August 8th, 2020, and it seems like a steep decline. Now, is this representative of just Virginia or is this nationally?
Now, there was a slight rise there in the later times on the chart when, in about mid-June, you'll see this coming up. About
Okay.
mid-June, the media went away from talking about deaths and they started talking about cases spiking. Oh my gosh, cases are spiking. And the implication of that was if the cases spiked in June and going forward in the different states, that more deaths would follow. That was what they did to continue this scare factor. But it
Okay.
turns out that the deaths don't follow that, and you'll see.
Okay. All right. So we go into the next chart. This deals with CDC COVID deaths by age, facts, and open the schools. This is your part of trying to make people aware, as far as public officials, also about why we should open the schools because the data supports opening the schools. So, can you explain that one for the audience?
Yeah, can you move that a little bit so that we can see the far left side of it?
Okay, you need for it to be bigger.
Well, I can't see when what I'm looking at. I can't see the far left columns over there. Okay, what's showing up?
Okay, I'm going to try to get that worked out. I think it's just mostly what the format is. Right
Okay,
now, it is to the left.
I want to speak to those two blue lines that just showed up there on the bottom chart. Okay,
Okay, right here where it says
that's
COVID
good. That's good
19
right there.
deaths by age, source CDC to February the 1st, 2020 through August 22nd, 2020.
That's right, till August 20th.
Okay,
So that's
okay,
all the way from where this all started, February 1st. That's good right there. That's good. Uh,
okay,
these are the age brackets down on the left side there, age groups. Oops, I just lost it. There we go. On the left-hand column, you see age group, and you see age 1 to 4, 5 to 14, 15 to 24, all the way down to, at the bottom, age 55 or 85 plus, okay? And you see COVID deaths in the second column. That's ever since August 20% of COVID deaths in that, of the total in that age bracket. And then you see over the next one, it says total U.S. deaths from all causes, not just COVID. People die from many, many causes. So the column over there says, well, how many people died in that age bracket from all causes and the percent of those. And so what I want to focus on here is so much conversation about the kids. And I want you to look at that age 5 to 14, that blue 5 to 14 there. And I think you all would be surprised to know that after 8 months, that the CDC says that nationwide through August 22nd, in America, the number of children 5 to 14, that's school age, is up to 28 in the country after 8 months. Let's see, that would be about 3 a month in the country, right? Now, in contrast to that, go over two lines or to all causes in that same time frame for the school age kids age 5 to 14. There was 2,900 deaths from all causes, and that children died in the 5 to 14 age bracket since February 1st, then died of COVID. So if anybody generally knew that, what we conclude from this is that children don't die of COVID. Essentially, they in 8 months. And so all this angst about going to school, not going to school, should we, do do it remotely and all that kind of thing. What this says, I think, to most people, if they only knew that, is that send the kids to school because they don't die of COVID, and the data is clear about it. And if the teachers don't want to go to school, that's another thing, okay? But the kids typically, the data shows they don't die of COVID. So send the kids to school, and if the teachers don't want to go to school, then don't come in. But there's no reason these kids shouldn't be in school in this country from that data, I believe. Going down to the bottom, however, 85 plus, you'll notice that as you go down the column, the percent of COVID deaths goes up, as you might imagine, so that by the time you get to the age 85 plus age bracket, 31.5% of all the COVID deaths reported in the country are of people who are 85 plus and aged, and many of them in assisted living houses. So that's 1/3 of all the COVID deaths of 180,000 there, 60,000 of them or so, 53,700, I guess, would be 51,000 of them. 31% are the aged people, and of course they have other comorbidities to go with it. So getting as proof positive that getting older is hazardous to your health, I guess, if you didn't know that already. Now, if you look at the age bracket down between 45 and 54, that's people who are, in midlife. Only 5% of the reported COVID deaths are in that age bracket. And in the 35 to 44 age bracket, only 2% of the 180,000 are in that, or that 164,000 in that bracket. So, it goes up rapidly at 65, 75, and 85. If we 31, 21, and 21, 26. So we can say that about 80% of all the COVID deaths reported are in the 65 and up category, people who had other comorbidities for the most part. Remember, out of that 164,000 that's reported there, only 9,000 or so of them actually died solely of COVID. And one last point about that, at the same time, 1,768,000 people died of all causes in the same time period. So that means that while we're all focused on the 165,000 COVID deaths, 10 times more died in the United States in the same time period by the COVID data in the same time period. So we focus 100% on COVID deaths, and nobody hardly talks about all the other ways you can die, and that's 10 times more than you hear about in the news. Every day, 10 times more people die of all causes than COVID. And then remember, a lot of that COVID number is inflated because it's not being told accurately because of the fact that it doesn't fit the narrative. Okay, it doesn't continue to scare the bejesus out of people who think that they're going to die of COVID-19. Again, if you're young and healthy and you don't have any comorbidities, your chances of dying of COVID-19 are minuscule. In fact, to be precise about that, if you are infected by COVID-19 and you have no other major health issues, your chances of surviving it or recovering it are 99.8% plus that you will recover, just like any other flu in the flu season. You have a very, very high chance of recovery if you are young and have no other comorbidities, 99.8% plus. So people should not worry about it if you have good health, okay? Just go out and live your life is what this would be telling you, but no. It's another
Okay, I had to mute the mic a little bit from my side because of the AC, but I wanted people to have a thorough explanation and hear you loud and clearly about what you're saying. So you're saying that the data does not support schools being closed at all.
No,
Now,
not when there's in 8 months. There's only 28 children in the 5 to 14 age bracket in the whole country who have allegedly died of COVID. Okay, that's essentially none in the country in 8 months.
all right, so now we're going to go to the next chart. He's actually, Mr. Black, for the audience out there that's just coming on the line, he's explained that all this data will be replayed after this show for those who got on the show a little bit late. But he's explaining to you what's really going on with these numbers and this data from the CDC and how to interpret it so you can apply it to real life. So we are not giving out fake information. This is all from the CDC, and this is showing you what's really going on here in America, as well as what's going on here in Virginia, so you can make a conscious decision on whether you send your kids back to school or what's really going on and how COVID is really affecting people's lives and whether this is overblown or not. And right now, what you're seeing from the numbers from what Mr. Black is telling you is that this whole situation with COVID is seriously overblown and it's a lot to deal with age brackets. Now, I'm going to the next screen right now, and this is COVID-19 deaths for 17
from each state COVID website. You can go to just Google any state and put in the state name on your search and COVID deaths, and it'll give you the state's COVID website date. I've got 17 states on this chart. Just a couple of comments to highlight certain lines. Number one at the top of there is the most recent data for Virginia, where I am at the moment. I don't know where everybody else is at the moment, how they're all in Virginia or elsewhere, but what that shows in the columns there is the total number of deaths in the first column for Virginia on July 1st or July 9th, what Virginia reported as the total number of COVID deaths on July 9th. And then I have another column, which is 59 days later, the next column over, which is September 6th. That's 59 days later. And then, therefore, we can see the number of people, increased people who have allegedly died in Virginia from July 9th to September 6th. The Virginia number.
Do I need to scroll down because I don't see the Virginia part, I see West Virginia. Do I need to go to another chart or just stick to this chart?
No, the orange now. What I'm looking at here is I see the orange up at the very top says.
Virginia. Oh, okay, I see it. I see it now. I'm sorry. Okay, I see it. Okay.
Yeah, we got it. It's good. It's good what you got there. And
okay.
As an example from this chart, then it says in Virginia on July 9th, Virginia had accumulated 1,937 COVID deaths. That's for the official Virginia State website. And then 59 days later, that was up to 2,677. And that would be an average of 12 and a half additional deaths per day. And since between July column there is what you never hear about. Since there's 8.5 million people in Virginia and there's 2,677 deaths attributed to it, what percentage of that 8.5 million people have died of COVID-19 per the Virginia website? Well, 2,677, the far right column says that's 3/100ths of 1% of all Virginians. Now, everybody focuses on the 2,677 number and says, my golly, that's a lot of deaths, COVID in Virginia. Well, actually, if you reference it against the 8.5 million residents of Virginia, it's 3/100ths of a percent. Now, that's not 3%, and that's not 0.3 of 1%. That's 3/100ths of 1%. That's 3 people in every 10,000 people in Virginia. That's what that amounts to. Okay, 3 in every 1,000. Okay, so this is, you go down the right and it's different. New York State was, people were supposedly in body bags and cul-de-sacs in New York City and New York State. I mean, New York State was all in the news about people dying like crazy of COVID. And as of September 6th, the number in New York State was up to 32,579. If you can read that, I hope you can read that and where you're looking at it. But 60 days earlier, it was 32,343. So you notice that in 60 days since July 9th, the deaths across New York State had only risen by about 200 in the whole state, including New York City. Okay. And that's across 19.5 million people in New York State. 19.5 people populate New York State. So when you get down to the fact that only 200 people in 60 days in the whole state, including New York City, have died allegedly of COVID-19 in the last 60 days, for all practical purposes, that says that you don't hear this COVID in New York State anymore. State. And in the meantime, the people would like you to think that there's all kind of reason to keep the stores closed in New York City, and the mayor in New York City to eat in a restaurant and so on. It's just all this kind of stuff. But the number of people actually dying in New York State is essentially zero in the last 60 days. But you don't hear that from the mainstream news, and you don't hear that from the governor of New York or the mayor of New York City either. But that's the truth that comes from the New York State official website there. You'll see that in some cases there are states that have extremely low death rates after 8 months here. West Virginia being one of them, right next door to us here in Virginia. West Virginia is 1/100th of 1% of the West Virginia population is recorded by the website in Virginia, official data now, 1/100th of 1%. So the highest death rate of all these states that are shown here, of the state, of the residents, is New York, and that's 1/10, 0.16%.
Okay.
And it goes all the way down to 1/100th of a percent. The point is about even that 1/10 percent, 1.16% for New York State. Typically, in an influenza season in America, and I got a note at the I said even New York State is only 0.168%. 0.1% is the lower bound of the normal annual flu deaths in America, which normally range between 1/10 of a percent and 0.3 of 1%. Every year, it's the flu season. Every year, between 1.1% and 0.3% of Americans die of the flu. And the New York number, even though that's the one that's top of the list here and everybody knows about at 0.16, is right in the middle of the normal range of flu deaths in America year after year. But nobody knows that because they don't understand that 0.1 to 0.3% of people in America die of the flu every year during the flu season. Oh, lastly, the last line there is for the United States. Got 188,000 COVID deaths listed there, 330 million people in America. And so what percentage of that, at 188,000, that percentage of that is of the American population? Only 0.05 of 1% of Americans have died. At 188,000 is only 0.5/100. 188,000, only 5/100, almost 6/100 of a percent of the 330 million people in this country. Some pandemic, huh?
Yeah, you're right about that one. I'm just amazed at these numbers and how Americans can interpret these numbers, but the fear that's going on on is just ridiculous, because basically what you're saying is it's not even at 1%. It looks like a total calculation of these less than 1%, being totaled up. And it's basically just saying go on with your life. And this is just another disease that so happens to be out there, but it shouldn't be considered a death warrant that people are making it out to be. So do you think politicians played a huge part in manipulating this into a pandemic?
Yeah, for now, not letting the Chinese off the hook here as to that part of the story, but as a
Oh yeah.
American data, the Chinese need to be have some consequences for what they imposed, if you would, of the coronavirus. But this has been blown all out of proportion in America, and get people to think that if they are infected by coronavirus that they're going to die. Okay, people do die of it.
Okay.
And it's 0.05%
Yeah, I would figure anybody could die from a disease. I'm like, people die from pneumonia, but they're not shutting down America.
In the prior chart, it shows that the 180,000 or so attributed to dying of COVID is only less than 1/10 of the number of people dying of all causes in the same time period. So, as you say, there's a lot of ways to go out of this world. A lot of ways to go out of the world, and yes, COVID, it does cause some people to die, although a very, very tiny percentage of compared to what people think, and that's a less than 10% of the way people die in the same time period. In fact, those who don't know right off the bat, the two top causes of death, if you can easily Google this and say, what's the highest death causes of death in the United States? The two type causes, you might imagine, they're each about 600,000 Americans per year. Okay, 600,000 per year, and we got our panties in a wad over the 180,000, of which only a tiny fraction of those are really purely COVID. Okay, so we're all focused on 180,000, of which a tiny amount is COVID. And we're oblivious to the fact that there's 600,000 deaths of heart disease and 600,000 deaths of cancer, and not to mention all the auto accidents and all that other things that happen. So we've completely forgotten about all the other ways to die. Okay, and they're far, far greater than COVID.
Okay.
Next chart here.
You got it? Okay. So let me know what chart you need for me to pull up.
It's the one that's the Virginia data of cases, the number of cases by date of symptom onset. It's called. This is from the Virginia website. Okay. Official Virginia Department of Health website. Okay. Now that picture, I hope everybody can see. There's a kind of a yellow line on all those blue bars there. And that's what's called a 7-day moving average. And this is cases. Now, you can see this every day by going to and you see this same picture there, updated every day. And the yellow line is what's called a 7-day moving. That's just kind of smooths the blue bars. And you can see the main thing of this chart for cases is the cases in Virginia peaked the first time on May 5th. That first on May 5th of this year, quite some number of months ago. Then the cases, these are the diagnosed cases, fell off. And then about mid-June, you see the yellow line starting to rise again. That's when everybody in the world started saying, oh my gosh, yes, cases are on the rise. We're having spikes. That was their favorite term. Spiking of the cases, okay? And up till about, mid-July or thereabouts, okay? And that's the yellow line we're looking at there. and then they're falling off again. Okay, cases, but the implication to keep the scare factor going when they started hearing about cases on the rise was that if cases go up, deaths will go up. That was the fear factor, right? My gosh, the cases go up, therefore deaths will follow. Okay, well, it turns out though that that's a lie. Okay, and it didn't happen. So the next chart there, which looks similar to the previous one. Okay, next chart, next one. It says number of deaths by the date of death. Okay, number of deaths, same time frame there. That's it. Now, once again, we got the yellow line there. That's the 7-day moving average. And you'll see that although the deaths peaked the same time that cases peaked earlier, May 5th, you can see that line peaked right there. We're looking at there, peaked May 5th. But although the cases started rising in mid-June, the deaths have fallen like a rock ever since May 5th. The fact that the cases went up, this is the official Virginia data now. The implication that because cases went up, the deaths will go up is a lie. It's not true. Hadn't happened. But what the public was led to believe, and that's why in the country, was if the cases go up, then the deaths will go up. But they didn't. And nobody knows that. But now you do. Okay. So next time you hear people, talking about cases spiking, the only reason they're talking about that was the deaths were falling off. In fact, I've got the number here for the deaths, and that I think the Virginia deaths are down since May 5th. On that chart there, if you calculate it, and I have, the Virginia deaths from COVID from the website are down 87.6% on that chart from the peak on May 5th. And how many people know that? Well, hardly any. Mm-hmm. So the time to be most scared, if you wanted to be scared, was up till May 5th this year. Okay, and today compared to May 5th, there's very little to be scared of. Okay, and there wasn't all that much to be scared of up to May 5th either, but certainly not now. It's down 87% from the peak on May 5th. Now, to get this right down to home a little closer, Virginia data for a few cities right here in our immediate area is that, for example, as of yesterday in Virginia Beach with 455,000 residents, look at by using your cursor over the map of Virginia that's on the Virginia Department of Health website, is officially at 7 months, 72 people in 455,000 residents in Virginia Beach have died, and it took 7.5 months to get there. So that's 1.015% of the residents of the 455,000 residents of Virginia Beach. 1/100th of 1%, basically, of the Virginia Beach residents, as of yesterday, have died of COVID. And a large portion of those, as you well imagine again, are in extended living places. So, and likewise for Chesapeake, that number is 49 as of yesterday, and 225,000 people who live in Chesapeake, which is about 0.02% of the Chesapeake residents. Not 2%, not 0.2%, 0.02% of 225,000 people who reside in Chesapeake.
Okay, so basically, it's a lot of closing down based off of a fear that hasn't even met the basic smell test of reason for any kind of shutdown. Okay, so I'm going back through to pull up the rest of the charts that you sent me off.
I got just one more I want to talk to, and then if there's questions or something, we can do that. But that's the one by Dr. Anthony Fauci, the famous Dr. Anthony Fauci. Thank you.
All right. Okay, looking to pull up.
It's just some text. Okay, it's from an article that Dr. Fauci. I'm sure you're all familiar with Dr. Fauci by now, who became the face of COVID in America for large measure. And the point of this is to show you that he wrote and co-authored an article in the prestigious New England Journal of Medicine back March 27th this year. That's when it was published. The very prestigious New England Medical Journal of Medicine, England Journal of Medicine. And he and two co-authors, all doctors, wrote this article, and it came out just before April Fool's Day this year. That's when we were really hot and heavy. That's it right there. That's it. Good for you. We were going really hot and heavy on, fear. Well, the title of this article, which I copied and pasted from the article, you can see it right there. Dr. Fauci himself said COVID-19 may be no more lethal than the common flu. This is March this year. And it turns out he's right about that. But the population in this America.
Okay.
Okay.
Make sure everybody has a chance to read it. So you're seeing exactly it's coming from Anthony Fauci.
I want to read that last yellow spot to you. Okay.
Okay.
And this suggests the case fatality rate may be considerably less than 1%. This suggests that the overall clinical consequences of COVID-19 may ultimately be more akin to those of a severe seasonal influenza, which has a case fatality rate of about 0.1%, or a pandemic influenza similar to those of 1957 and 68, rather than a disease similar to SARS or MERS, which have had a case fatality rate of 9 to 10 or 36%.
Okay.
Fauci, and he's on the stage every day. This is when they're having the daily briefs. Okay, him and Rex, I guess her name is. Okay, prancing around on the stage with the daily briefings every day. He just has written and published this article that you're looking at right here. He's just done this before April Fool's Day. And it says,
yeah, this is disturbing.
Nobody.
This is disturbing.
Okay, and it turns out he was exactly right. It ain't 9 or 10% death.
Wow.
Fatality rate. Okay, and it's not like the swine flu or whatever. It turns out, it's tenths of a percent or hundreds of a percent. Okay. And he said it in the New England Journal of Medicine, which is the most prestigious medical journal in this country. In that article you're looking at, it's copied and pasted from that article. I did it.
Okay. So everybody can see where it's in yellow. This is what he's talking about right now. That basically this COVID-19 is no more different than pretty much pneumonia or flu as far as the numbers, and realistically they're neck and neck. So basically what we are seeing here is actually Anthony Fauci, who has been the expert on I guess disease control or whatever, and we're seeing his real notes about what he really said about this disease.
Exactly. I mean, go figure. And that's God's truth right there. That's his article, co-authored with two others, March 27th when it was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. And who's ever heard of that? One more comment, and going ahead, two things here. I recently learned that for you people who just want to do some, oh, okay, since you got that article there, this article he's brought up there in Primus is that's with the Hillsborough College, and that article in particular is a lady who takes our elected officials to task and basically says, you know what we're talking about here, and you are to tell people the truth. Okay, in other words, as elected officials, you have a duty to tell people the truth about this instead of fanning the fear. And that says 4 months of unprecedented government malfeasance. So it's a marvelous article, and it just nails the government officials, like, let's talk to the governor of New York and so on, or even our own governor here in Virginia, that they got to know that this is all trumped up or much ado about relatively nothing, and they're still using it to hammer people and put them out of business and cause just ungodly disruption to our lives day after day for no particular reason. The data doesn't support it. I did want to say though that we hear so much now about the vaccine. Okay, now this is my own personal opinion given all the data here, but given that this is really flies by any stretch of the imagination, uh, I don't know that America needs any vaccine. And if we do have a vaccine, and the Department of Health guy in Virginia, or maybe you don't know, he's already said, if you don't know this, he's an unelected bureaucrat. He's already said when the vaccine is available, every Virginian is going to be getting shot with it. Every Virginian. They're going to weaponize that vaccine. Okay. And I'm telling you, do your own thing. But here's one guy who's not getting the vaccine because I got all this data and I don't need the vaccine. I never took a flu shot in my life. I'm 73 years old. And I'm not about to be forced to take a vaccine, which has been rushed through like no other time, with nobody ever know what the long-term effects of that vaccine would be, and knowing that I don't need it anyway because I'm not likely to die. This unfold here when the Department of Health guy in Virginia wants everybody to get shot with it, whether you want it or not. It'll be a chance to weaponize that vaccine. And if you don't get it, what they'll try and do is say, well, you didn't get vaccinated, so there's certain things you won't do anymore, like certain places you won't go or certain airplanes you won't get on or whatever. Okay. All of this is completely unnecessary, says me. You can take it for whatever it's worth, but I know all the data. I've lived it for 7 months now, and this risk is completely blown. Vaccine. Uh, and I certainly don't need a vaccine, and I'm not going to have a vaccine. Bring it on, is what I say. And then finally, I just recently learned that you probably don't know this, but it appears to be true. I've got an article here, which is called "How Zinc and What's Called Zinc Glutamate is Very Effective and Has Been Known for years and years. Zinc glutamate has been known to be very effective at inhibiting the reproduction of the coronavirus family, of which coronavirus 19 is just one of a family of coronaviruses that's been studied for decades. So you can take this for whatever it's worth, but it seems to be real science that the zinc glutamate, which you can find in things like Cold-Ease or these Z-Packs, whatever, as a preventative, what happens is that zinc, when you see the picture of the coronavirus that you've all seen a million times, got these little red things sticking out of a sphere. engineer, I'm not a chemist, and I'm not a doctor. In the not overdosed in the body, zinc atoms can basically bond to those little red things there that are on that picture of the coronavirus organism that you see. And when that happens, it disables the ability to reproduce in a cell. The virus itself is not living. It has to be in a human cell in order to replicate. But once it's in the cell, if there's some zinc on those things, it inhibits the reproductive ability of the virus to reproduce itself, or what they call increase the viral load in your body. And so if you take some zinc, according to the science, and that's why people take the I guess the time period to have a cold and so on. Okay, they take it has zinc in it, the zinc coldies, for example. Then if you do that, what you're doing apparently is you're increasing your probability that the coronavirus, if you do come in contact with it, will not be able to have as easy time of replicating in your body, and therefore getting out of control, because the zinc inhibits the ability of the coronavirus to replicate. And apparently, that's been known for a long, long time by the virologists and so on. But you never hear anything about that, do you? Searching on zinc and its interaction with the coronavirus, I think you'll quickly find out that there's a lot of good science out there to say that if you got yourself a bottle of zinc or cold, a lot of people who, for one reason or another, have been taking a zinc pill for a long, long time. I don't think there's any downside to it that's known. And if those zinc atoms are in there and you have some of them evil coronavirus microorganisms there, the zinc will tend to inhibit their ability to reproduce. That's a good piece of knowledge. You can check it out for yourself, but best I know, it'd be a good investment to acquire some zinc. In fact, I tried to go acquire some recently, and I couldn't find any on the shelf. Okay, because I think a lot of people, more than I know something about the ability of zinc to prevent runaway of the coronavirus in the human body. That's it. Merle, you've done a fine job of summarizing what we got to say here. I have to give you all the credit in the world. Merle, you've picked it up just perfectly. Are you still out there? I can't hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. I put the mute on so it wasn't no background noise while you were talking, so everybody could hear you clearly. But what's going on is basically I'm seeing economic destruction of our economy. I'm seeing mental health crisis based off of a disease that has caused no more death than any other disease that's out there. And we are doing all of this, doing the mask, doing the social distancing, and all of this for a disease that technically you can have, but not even know you have it. Or if you do, is a high probability that you are going to survive based off of your age, your health, based off of similar situations with any other disease. If you have a bunch of diseases attack your body, it's harder to fight. But if you are a healthy, human being, then your likelihood of surviving this disease is almost at 100%. It's definitely at 98 point whatever percent, and
99.8.
99.8. And this doesn't make sense. All these restrictions that has happened for the last few months, and we have seen the total havoc on everything except for people's health, meaning, you know, their bills. Everything that doesn't have anything to do with this disease that's a part of real life. And they're trying to put this fear all out there and have people going out of control. Also trying to get away with mandatory vaccines because they feel like the fear should have compliance with American citizens. And what you're saying is, and what the data is supporting, that we caused our own destruction of our economy, our mental health, everything based off of a disease that has no real seriousness out there. You know, it's just basically another disease. You know what I'm saying? That you can survive.
Let me say this. Actually, in studying this as I have for 8 months and so on, there is actually two diseases going on simultaneously. There's the physical disease that captures everybody's attention. Of course, that's the physical disease of COVID, which does kill people on occasion, to be sure. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
another way that people die.
Mm-hmm. But
Talking about is the mental disease. Okay, and it is really a mental disease that's associated with what's called OCD, which is obsessive compulsive disorder. OCD, you probably heard that. It's an official mental disease. In this case, it's a variation of obsessive compulsive disorder, which is an obsession with dying. Okay, it's a mental disease that, in fact, is not founded on fact. Okay, and it's much harder to get rid of that. As you can tell people what we just did here. I've had it happen. You show people these facts right where they come from, and they're so convinced with the mental disease, they will not accept that they've been duped. Okay, the mental disease is much harder to get rid of, and the only way to break the back of this thing in America is to get people to understand these data. Now we hear them talk about we're following the science all the time. That's a favorite sign, and that favorite sign, hey, we're following it. No, we're not. Okay, because
yes,
okay, but
yes,
mental disease, two diseases, physical and mental, and we have brainwashed people with the mental disease, and it is much more difficult to get rid of than the physical disease.
yes, definitely. And I know I'm running out of time, but I believe we have covered every single chart so far. There's going to be updates. I know that moving forward, but we can say for a good probability for how long we have known about this disease, how many months have followed, that we have a good grasp that basically the American people have been basically duped about this disease and lied to since the beginning. And I think President Trump has been trying to really get this out there. But of course, if you have a bunch of doctors or whatever it may be adding on to the fear, and I'm not sure what their purpose was, because it's clear from their notes that they knew this disease wasn't at this level. And they could have stopped a lot of damage mentally and economically for a lot of people had they told the truth. And this is one of those situations where I'm not sure how we go from here, but I believe this is a great start to start up the conversation as well as let people know that this is what's really happening right now. We are really dealing with a fear that has been manufactured.
Who's on the call wants to know more, you can give them my contact information, Merle, and I'll be happy to. But they need to spread the word here, because to break the back of this, people need to know these numbers. They need to know this, and then we'll have a chance of breaking the mental disease that's infested this country. Sometimes it gets worse. There's people out there who are so embedded in this that if you're not wearing your mask or something somewhere, they get nasty about it. They got their mask on or something, and you're
Yeah.
not, and they want to come up and basically beat you up and say, "What are you doing to hurt other people like this or something?" It gets bad, and it's got to stop.
Okay, and what is the best form of contact for people out there? I know there's a couple of people that are calling and texting me, and I'm pretty sure we on a 10-second delay because of StreamYard on comments. What is the best way for them to contact you if they have further questions about this data and more about, what COVID really means for the CDC as far as the data that's out there? What's the
Yeah,
best kind
I would suggest that just a simple email to Den Black. That's like DenBlack, no spaces, just simple Den. Den short for Dennis. Okay, Den Black at Cox. That's COX.net. Okay, a simple and a clear subject line on it. Okay, because I get zillions of emails. So, a clear subject line to Den Black at Cox.net.
Okay, and I have it up here for everybody at this time period. This video will be replayed afterwards for those who was late coming on the show. Y'all need to actually listen to the entire interview because this explains it out thoroughly. Have your friends and family actually listen to this interview, especially those who are in fear or panicking or whatever it may be. So you have a full understanding of what's actually happening here in America as far as COVID and the data and how it's being interpreted. So I think this was one of the most important interviews to put out there to let people know, stop being in fear of this disease. This is nothing different than any other disease that's out there. And realistically, it has been overblown by far. But it's time for America to get back to work. It's time to reopen Virginia and reopen our schools. And it's time to go on with life. That's how I look at it, because there's no reason to be masked up or doing social distancing for a disease like this that doesn't have the fatality or mortality rate that would even be of concern. To be honest, you can die from a car accident more than worry about COVID right now. So I would
Earl,
like
you've done a real service to the people that you got hooked up on this, a real service, bless your heart, to get some of this out to the people who need to spread it further, because we got to break the back of this. It's got to stop. We got to get back to normalcy again. Okay, and my vision is I'll spots on the floor standing 6 feet apart. Okay, if we ever get to that point, we'll have it right. Door. Okay,
I agree. I agree. Well, it's time for me to go ahead and close out the show. Dean Black, it was a great pleasure to have you on the show because, of course, I found out from you in person, at a Portsmouth rally in support of Chief Green. But as far as it's concerned, you have done an outstanding job of keeping up with the data and keeping track and making sure that people understand exactly what's going on, because a lot of people get caught up in the fancy language. You explained it to them so they can understand it from layman's terms. This is what's going on. This is how you look at this data, and it helps them moving forward when new data comes out, what to look at and how to understand it. And that's the biggest purpose that I wanted from this interview. And you did that. And I would like to thank you. Y'all all know how to contact Dean Black if you have questions and concerns, and we will replay this. So I look forward to everybody going back to normal sooner than later. And right now,
like Bear's Den, okay? Bear's like Den, okay? Like Bear's Den. Den Black at Cox.net, okay?
Okay. All right, then I'm signing out. This is the CDC analysis and interpretation of data update with Den Black, and I look forward to seeing you in the near future. And thank you for your time. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye. Let the broadcast go. Uh,